Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to head down to England once again, and we're going to have a look at another beer from a brewery that has featured on the channel a good number of times before. I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the years, and they really made their name when it comes to the whole New England hazy IPA sort of thing, but quite a lot of breweries are doing that these days. So this is going to be my fourth dedicated review to these guys, and also my 7th overall, so 3 collaboration beers on the channel involving this brewery. So we're going to go to Manchester once again, and we're having a look at yet another beer from Track Brewing Company. So this one is called the Wake Up the Neighbours. It comes in at 8% ABV, and like I said, it's another hazy New England style, however you want to call it, IPA. So yeah, this one is brewed in collaboration with Indie Hops, who are a sort of hop breeding and research based organisation from Portland in Oregon over on the American West Coast, and yeah, hopefully it turns out to be another interesting beer. This one I think I saw on social media at some point. I bought this beer from the House of Trembling Madness down in York. Great shop if you can get there physically, but they've also got an awesome web shop, so do check those guys out if you want some English beers. The English Beer Tubers tell me they're one of the best value web shops in England. But yeah, this one, I got this one because the name sort of struck a chord with me, so I'm sure I saw something on social media about this particular beer, and I just remembered it when I saw it. They had a whole host of different track brewing things there, but as I said, when it comes to trying something new from a brewery that I know, or you know, something from a brewery that I don't know, it usually comes down to something like the name of the beer or the artwork actually. So yeah, that was the main reason why I went for this one over the other Track beers that they had. But yeah, cool to see that Indie Hops are being featured on this one as well. I've noticed that it seems to be becoming a little bit fashionable to do collaborations with different malt producers and different hop organisations and things like that as well, and it's quite nice actually, because it means that these guys who are behind the ingredients are getting a little bit of recognition from the beer drinkers as well, because you know, normally most people would just associate the beer simply with the brewery rather than thinking about the ingredients and stuff that actually go into the beers too. So a few breweries I've encountered have been doing this recently. Stigbergets back over in Sweden. I think Frau Gruber and First Viatchik in Germany were doing it as well, come to think of it. So yeah, cool to see that that phenomenon is spreading to England as well, and yeah, long may it continue. Hopefully this is something we continue to see over the next little while, because it is quite nice to learn all about these different malteries and hop growers and things like this. So yeah, definitely looking forward to this one. As I said, an 8% New England double IPA, and this one is brewed using Strata from the 2020 harvest over in Oregon in the States. So yeah, fingers crossed it's another good beer, but knowing Track it will be, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, let's get on and have a little look at the history section of the video then. So as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery and also about Indie Hops in this case as well before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to Indie Hops that you can check out as well. There's also a link down there to my other reviews that I've done involving Track Brewery, and I'm sure we'll add more to that list in the fairly near future. There's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the English beers that I've reviewed for you. That's being added to quite regularly at the moment, because I am at home in the motherland of Scotland, and we are also getting a fairly steady stream of English beers over in Sweden as well through Systembolaget, which is great. I've told you before, the English beer scene is very strong at the moment, so long may that continue. But as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Track Brewing then, on to my brewery notes. So as I've told you before, Track Brewing are based in Piccadilly in central Manchester, and they were founded back in 2014 by Sam Dyson. So Sam studied maths and economics at university, and he also homebrewed while he was studying because it was a source of cheap beer. But over time he grew very fond of the science behind brewing the beer and the creativity that it allowed him to have while still maintaining a kind of central process. But after studying, he took a trip on his bike, travelling across 5 different continents and 25 countries, and the first part of this trip was to go across the US, and it was there that he started visiting lots of different brewery tap rooms, and his knowledge of beer only benefited from this. But when he returned to England, he went to London and started working in the beer industry down there, and then he later returned to Manchester. So he rented out an archway in Sheffield Street, very close to the Piccadilly Central Railway Station, and so in this area there's a lot of different food producers, breweries and things like that, Cloudwater being one of many, but this has been really good for them actually. They've added to an already very vibrant craft beer scene down there. But he was joined early on in the stages of the business by Matt Dutton and Will Harris, and they've really helped direct the company in the right way, and they're doing very, very well as it stands. But they also have their own tap room a few streets away from the brewery. I think I went to visit this with Rob and Harry and all the other English beer tubers when Paul from PA Brew News in the States was in Manchester visiting, and that was great fun actually. I think that was where I bought the first beer that I reviewed from these guys actually on the channel, so you can go back and check that that video out as well if you want to. But as of January 2021, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced around 280 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, and they do some really, really great stuff. The last beer that I had from these guys, the Sonoma Pale, that is kind of their sort of signature beer, I guess you could say. So that is one that I would highly recommend that you check out from these guys. I tried that recently thanks to my good friend Adam over at Mersey Beers. So yeah, big thank you to Adam for that one once again. And as I said earlier, it's definitely nice to have Track Brewing here on the channel once again. But that's all I can really tell you about Track Brewing Company for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, pretty cool actually. 280 different beers is pretty impressive, come to think of it. But yeah, a little bit about indie hops as well, since this is a sort of collaboration beer. So as I mentioned to you earlier, indie hops are based in Portland in Oregon over on the American West Coast, and they were founded back in 2009 by Roger Worthington and Jim Solberg. But apparently they built the first post-farm hop processing facility in the state of Oregon, and they were quite, from what I gather, pioneering when it comes to the creation of these little hop pellets. But in the early days, they convinced many of the Oregon farmers to start producing different varieties of hops. Apparently, you know, 95% or something like that of the Oregon hop crop was Williamette, that was bought by the big companies such as Anheuser-Busch and AB InBev, or well, AB InBev, yeah, these companies basically bought by the big conglomerate breweries. But over time, more and more of the hop farms have started producing different varieties, and these guys have been instrumental in the research of quite a few different hops, including Cascade and the Strata hop that is in this one. But essentially, this company, as I mentioned earlier, is basically a sensory focused hop breeding and hop research based organisation. So yeah, their office is in Portland in Oregon, if you do want to go and visit them or whatever. So yeah, that's all I can really tell you about them. There wasn't too much information on them, but it does seem like quite an interesting little project actually. So yeah, if you want to learn more about these guys, I'll put their website in the description box below as well, and you can check that out, and of course, you know, follow them on Facebook and Instagram and stuff like that. And yeah, that's all we can really say about indie hops for the moment. But yeah, let's get on to the actual tasting of this beer then. So as I mentioned to you earlier, this one is an 8% New England Double IPA. It's hot with Strata, and it's got a malt base of extra pale and Munich malts along with a little bit of oats. Apparently it's quite an oat heavy New England Double IPA, this one. But to tell you a little bit about Strata, I did a little bit of research on this as well, because it's a hop that I've only had maybe 2 or 3 times before. But this is an American hop, obviously, derived from the open pollination of pearl at Oregon State University. It was originally known as X331 before it was given its name, and apparently it can give you between 11 and 18% alpha acid, and it will give you aromas and flavours of grapefruit, passion fruit and strawberry, along with quite a strong dankness. So yeah, maybe this is a hop that is going to become quite popular actually. But 11 to 18% alpha acid is quite a, you know, a wide spectrum actually. The only other hop I can think of that has this level of this level of prowess to it would be or this level of strength to alpha acid would be the Nelson Sauvin from New Zealand. It can have like that can have like 16-17% alpha acid from what I remember. But yeah, let's get on and actually have a taste of this beer then. I think this should be quite interesting. Not had Strata too many times, like I said, 2 or 3, but the artwork on this one is very, very nice. You can see it's quite typical actually of what I've seen from Track Brewing Company before. But there you can see the Track T on the top of this one. I think it's named Track basically just because it's kind of under the track almost. But there you can see the Indie Hops symbol as well, which is quite nice. Wake Up the Neighbours, double IPA with Strata, 2020 Strata in it. But yeah, it looks very, very nice, this one. Brewed and canned at Track Brewing Company, Unit 5, Sheffield Street, Manchester. So yeah, 8% ABV this one. 440ml can. I think I paid like £6 or £7 for this one, so to tell you that in different currencies, £6 would be probably, you know, about 70, 75 Swedish kronor, something like that, for those of you watching over there. Probably about, yeah, maybe €7.50, something like that, and I guess about $8 American for those of you watching over there. So yeah, let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. Very, very curious to see what this beer has in store for us. So yeah, let's get this guy out. I'll go on with the tasting. Get on with the tasting. I'm wondering, I think this might well be the strongest beer I've had from Track Brewing Company so far, come to think of it. Obviously excluding the collaborations. But yeah, I think that'll do for the moment to have a look at the aroma and things like that. But yeah, that is pretty damn hazy, I have to say. That's one of the hazier 8% New Englands that I've come across in recent times. But you can see this beer has poured with a lovely solid finger of a frothy, I would say slightly cream coloured head. There's 1 or 2 big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, but not a lot of visible carbonation in this one, to be honest. If I shine the light through this beer is very, very hazy, but I would say that the colour of this one is somewhere between a mango juice and a pineapple juice. It's got a lovely kind of, it's quite bright in yellow. It's almost kind of like this part of the can here, but it's got a lovely kind of very hazy, almost quite pale yellowy orange colour to it. But yeah, I really like how this one comes across. I always like comparing the New England IPAs to different fruit juices because that's really just what their appearance reminds me of. So yeah, this one's somewhere between a mango and a pineapple juice for me. It's got a bit of the paleness of the pineapple, but also the kind of brightness of the mango juice at the same time. But remember, as I've told you before, the colour of these beers is dependent on 2 things. 1, type of malts that you use, 2, the length of your boil. Usually a beer like this will go through a boil of about 70 to 90 minutes. And yeah, the longer you boil the beer, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a slightly kind of darker colour out of it. And I think there is maybe a little touch of that going on here. But yeah, the Munich malts can give you quite a nice yellow colour when you put them under a little bit of a longer boil. So yeah, maybe that's what's going on here. But yeah, level of haze on this one for an 8% ABV, while not unexpected, it is pretty impressive. I've had, you know, quite... this is one of the soupier and gloopier ones I think that I've seen in recent times. I've had ones that have not looked soupy and gloopy at all. So this one I think will be quite a nice change. Remember, the level of haze that you have in these New England IPAs depends on the wheat and the oat content. So this one is quite oat heavy apparently. Maybe that's what explains the level of haziness there. But yeah, nothing overly surprising about this beer in terms of its appearance when you consider what style it is. But I have to say I am certainly curious to see how this one turns out, and especially to learn a little bit more about the Strata hop, because it's not one that I've come across too often before, and it's always great to expand your knowledge in these areas. So yeah, let's have a little look at the aroma then and see how we get on with this one. Really curious about this beer, and it looks beautiful. Ooh, now that is really nice. I mean, straight away with this beer, if you focus on the malty side of things, it comes across really, really nicely. I mean, you've got a lovely kind of soft white bready bit to it, but the bread really takes a back seat in favour of the oats right away. This beer almost smells, it almost gives off the vibe of being like a little bit chalky or something, because the oats are so prominent in this one. You don't get really any wheat out of this one at all. Does it actually have wheat in it? Yes, it does. You don't really get any of that wheaty bitiness out of this one because the malt base is so almost kind of saturated by oats. At least that's the impression that the aroma gives. I mean, you have to take the aroma in pretty deeply to get even a little hint of the kind of bitiness of the wheat there. But yeah, the oats that come out of this, they're really nice. You do get a little bit of an almost powdery, chalky type smell off them. But I say chalky, that maybe sounds a little bit negative, but I don't mean it in that way. The oats have a lovely kind of smoothness and sweetness to them. And the more that you smell this beer, the more that lovely oaty sweetness kind of starts to dominate your nose, to be honest with you. You can smell the soft white bready influence of the Munich malt in there. I love a bit of Munich malt, huge fan of my German lagers, as you'll know if you've watched the channel. So I always think Munich malts are very, very nice in these New England IPAs. But yeah, when you sugar this beer up a little bit more, you will get a few little hints of the wheat out of the beer. And I'm curious to see whether the wheat is a little bit more prominent in the flavour than it is in the aroma, because the malty side of this beer is the kind of, you can get the softness and the kind of crispness almost of the white bread from the Munich malt in here underneath, but it's the oats and the big smoothness and thickness of the oats that dominate here, even though they've got a little bit of an almost powdery dryness in the aroma, and then, as I say, just a little touch of wheat when you sugar the beer up and aggravate it a little bit. But there is a wee tiny little bit of a kind of Werther's Original type sweetness coming out of this one. I've noticed that in quite a few different New England IPAs these days, and I quite like it, to be honest with you. I mean, there's quite a few of the Scandinavian breweries that I've had experience with are doing things like this these days, putting a little bit of sweetness into the beer. So maybe that's what's going on here a little bit. But I think this is an awesome beer from that perspective as well. I think it's really nicely done on the malty side of things. As I've said to you before, I like paying attention to the malts in beers because it's the Scottish sweet tooth, of course. But yeah, let's focus on the hoppy side of things then. That's what the IPAs tend to be all about. But yeah, on the green side of things then. So this one, this gives the impression that there's a lot of late addition hop in this. I don't think there's too much bittering hop been used in this beer. Remember, as you kind of go through the boil, normally these kind of beers will have like a 70 to 90 minute boil, but as you go through the boil, if you add the hops in the early stage, it's all about the bittering, but as you progressively go through, you get a trade-off from the bitterness in favour of the flavour and aroma, and it smells like this beer. There's not too much of a big dankness or whatever out of this beer, so that indicates that most of the hops are late additions, I would say. But yeah, the aroma coming out of this beer is absolutely lovely on the fruity side of things. When it comes to the green side of things, you do get a little bit, you can smell a wee touch of pine resin and stuff in here. You do get a wee bit of that resinous quality that I was reading about from the strata there, but it almost comes across as being a little bit spicy and sort of floral aromatic in a sense, which is quite interesting. So yeah, that's a good point to make about this one. It's got a nice little bit of grassiness in there as well, but I would say the green component of the beer is not very prominent for me. Soft bit of grassiness there, a little touch of zestiness to the grassiness as well, but then you do get a wee bit of a kind of piney resin just sitting in behind actually. So yeah, that's a really interesting point to make about this beer for sure. It's the green component for me is not overly prominent, but soft grassiness, little touch of kind of more piney resin and grassy spiciness, floral spiciness in there, sorry, but yeah, not too prominent. Let's have a look at the fruity side of the beer then, because Strata I think has some very interesting things going on there. So yeah, the fruit for me again, it's got a nice, you do get a little bit of that pungent passion fruity grapefruit thing out of this beer, but the more it has a wee bit of that in there, but this whole beer, because of the oaty presence, the sheer amount of oats that are in it, it comes across as really quite soft. It really comes across as a very soft, juicy beer overall. So you get a wee bit of that passion fruit and grapefruity pungency out of the beer, but you can actually get a little bit of that. It's almost like a kind of candied strawberry, like a sort of strawberry cream kind of thing coming out of this one. You do get a little bit of that for sure, and I think the other beers that I had with Strata, you didn't notice the strawberry so much, but there is a wee bit of that kind of candied red fruity thing going on with this beer, which is really interesting. It's maybe almost like a little touch kind of, it's almost just a little touch kind of figgy or something like that. You could be forgiven for thinking there's a wee bit of like papaya or apricot or something in here as well. from the hops. But yeah, that you do get that juicy. You do get that juicy kind of candy strawberry kind of thing coming out of it too, which I really quite appreciate about it. So yeah, this is quite an interesting one. I think the beer itself overall might be a little bit oat heavy to let the full extent of the kind of strata come out. Maybe a little bit more kind of bittering hop in the early stage might have helped it kind of flourish a little bit more almost, but it does smell like a very nice and inviting beer, very oat thick and very kind of soft and fruity in my opinion. So let's just stick the last little bit of it in the glass and then we'll have a taste of this one. As I always say, take a little bit of time to ponder over the aroma of the beer before you try it, but we're going to have a taste of this one now and see how we get on. So this one is called Wake Up the Neighbours, a New England IPA coming in at 8% ABV, a double IPA from Track Brewing Company in Piccadilly in Manchester, brewed in collaboration with indie hops from Portland and Oregon, a sensory focused hop research and breeding based company, if you like. Let's get stuck into this one. Slàinte, skål, cheers. Oh yeah, that is pretty damn solid, I have to say. And I'm not surprised, you know. Track Brewing Company, they've got a reputation for a reason, and this is just another solid beer from them. Yeah. Where to start with this one then? It's actually, this is one of the ones that's really quite similar to what it shows you in the aroma, to be quite honest with you. This one's got quite a lot of similarity with the aroma, but it's a very nice beer. Like I say, a big thumbs up to Track Brewing Company for this one. They've pulled off a solid beer here, in my opinion. So yeah, let's have a little look at this. So on the malty side of things, again, it's kind of what you would expect. It's got a lovely big smoothness to it. Yeah, so straight away with this beer, you can feel that big, thick oatiness just blanketing the middle of your palate there. That goes right across the middle of your tongue. And it does feel really quite thick. The middle of your palate in this beer is really just ridiculously smooth, to be honest with you. When you progress further into the aftertaste, you'll start to notice a little bit of the Munich malt just coming out underneath that. And it just gives the beer a little bit of a slightly crisp edge, which I think is very nice. So you can feel that soft white bready Munich malt just underneath the oats. The further into the aftertaste you go, but that big smooth thick oatiness is just sitting there. As you push into the back third of your palate, you can feel that there's a wee bit of how would you say, you can feel that there's a wee bit of kind of a bit of that softer breadiness that I'm talking about from the Munich malt in there again, actually. But then on top of that, you get you do get a little bit of the wheaty thickness in the back. It's almost in the back half of that back third of your tongue, if that makes sense. You can feel the slightly thicker qualities of the beer there, but as you move further forward, the smoothness really sits there. As you reach the as you reach the kind of border between back third and middle third of your palate, the thickness just drops away a little bit, briefly, because the beer does have a little bit of crispness on that border between middle third and back third of your palate. But then as you move further forward a bit, it thickens up again. Pardon me, with the kind of oaty notes that the beer has. The malt base is almost really quite straight shooting in this one, but it's like really nicely executed. I don't find too much in the way of complexity to the beer. Definitely a little bit more wheat focused in the back third of your tongue, but the oats, pardon me, dominate the kind of middle third of your palate. You've just got the Munich malt kind of sitting underneath both of them, to be honest. So it's a really interesting one. You will notice a little bit of sweetness develop out of this beer the further you go into the aftertaste, particularly in the centre of the palate. You've got a wee bit of that kind of Werther's Original butter candy type thing in there, but it's not madly prominent, to be honest with you. But yeah, the malt base suits the rest of the beer really quite nicely, to be honest. But yeah, very, very creamy New England IPA, this one. If you like the Treehouse New England IPAs, this one's maybe even you know, potentially more creamy than those ones that you'll have from them. So yeah, definitely a very oat forward New England IPA. Really, you can take these in quite a few different directions. They can be a little bit more yeasty focused, they can be a little bit more oaty, wheaty, barley malt, or sometimes even rye. Sometimes you can get a little bit more rye out of these New England IPAs. But yeah, it is it is quite interesting actually. But yeah, onto the hoppy side of things then. Back corners of the palate, there's a tiny little bit of earthiness there. As you move further forward, it gets a wee bit herbal, and then as you reach the kind of front half of the kind of front the sides of your tongue, it's definitely got you can feel a little bit of a piney note in there. But with this beer, I mean, these New England IPAs are not the most bitter of beers. If this was a West Coast IPA, you'd be getting probably a hell of a bitterness out of this beer, and a hell of a piney resin. But it's just got a little bit of soft resin underneath there, and you've got a little bit of a floral aromatic spice right on the front corners of your palate. So nice little green component to it. But then round the front curve of the tongue, the beer is definitely lighter and more grassy, to be honest with you. But again, the softness of the green components in this beer really suit the whole mantra of the beer, that you know, that whole sort of that whole soft oaty kind of vibe that the beer has. So yeah, I really like that about this one for sure. But yeah, on the fruity side of things then, as I always say, on the front third of your palate, that's where you get that nice oily bubble where those juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. So for me, this one again is very, very nice. It's kind of got what you would expect when you read about this hop, and as I say, when it comes to new hops, I like to read about them a bit and see what you should get and what you actually get out of them. So yeah, when you take this beer in, you do get a little bit more of the pungent tropical fruits out of it, but very quickly the beer just it just juicens up and, you know, leans towards that really creamy side of things. It's interesting, as I say, when you go towards the back of that front third of your palate, you get a little bit of the stronger, you get a little bit of that stronger kind of passion fruity type vibe out of the beer. You do get a little bit of that. You get maybe a tiny little bit of grapefruit on that border region between front third and middle third of your palate. But as you move further forward, it is a really soft kind of passion fruit that comes out of this one. And as you reach the front half of the front third of your palate, it's got a little bit of, you do get a little bit of that kind of strawberry sort of thing coming out, but because of the sheer oat presence in this beer, it just has a really soft kind of, it just really has a kind of soft, almost like strawberry and cream type vibe to it, to be honest with you. It's a little bit like that. So yeah, very soft, kind of candied red fruity notes coming out of the beer overall. But I really like how that pieces together in this one. It's a lovely beer. I mean, it has, the Strata hop really has everything that you would expect out of it. A little bit of passion fruit, a little bit of a wee tiny bit of grapefruit for me. There's a few almost like papaya type soft tropical notes in there. I guess you could interpret it as apricot as well, in fairness. Those are quite common things that you can get from a lot of New England IPAs these days, in fairness. But yeah, you definitely get a wee bit the kind of candied strawberry thing. The strawberry almost becomes a little bit more oily the further that you progress into the aftertaste with this beer as well. But yeah, I really like this. I really like how this one goes together. It's definitely a big soupy gloopy New England IPA. But yeah, when you read about the hop and you have a look at the aroma, this beer really delivers kind of it really delivers on your perception of what this beer is going to be like. It's one of these ones that really matches, the aroma really matches quite well. And in fairness, it's probably been designed to bring out these different elements of strata, and it does that very, very well. Quite often, you know, when they do single hop beers like this, they will design the malt base to suit, to highlight certain flavours and stuff like this. So yeah, this beer pulls that off really quite nicely. So thumbs up to Track Brewing Company for doing that with this one. So yeah, this is a nice beer that really teaches you a little bit about strata, and I wonder if this will become a more kind of popular hop. Maybe one tiny little criticism I would have of this beer is that it maybe could do with just a little bit of bitterness to highlight the green side of strata a little bit more. But that's me nitpicking. You guys know I love West Coast IPAs and I like a little bit of bitterness. This beer doesn't have a lot of bitterness to it at all, to be honest with you. So maybe a wee bit of bitterness to this beer, maybe 30 IBUs or something could have been another direction to take it. But as it stands, it is still a very nice beer. This is me being very picky. But yeah, on to the mouthfeel then to round off the review. This is a very, very thick New England double IPA, as I've kind of indicated throughout. I would consider this beer to be quite... I consider this beer to be in the kind of full-bodied spectrum. It's kind of at the bottom to mid-end of the full-bodied part of the spectrum. Carbonation is very, very smooth. It's a really thick, creamy New England IPA, this one. This is one of the thickest ones I've come across in quite a little while, come to think of it. But yeah, green component for me. It does develop a little bit of bitterness the further you go into the aftertaste, but not a lot. As I say, it must just be about 15 IBUs or something like that. There's not a lot of bitterness to this beer at all. It's about Hefeweizen level bitterness, which is again not a lot. So yeah, maybe could do with a little touch of bitterness to it, just to give you a kind of almost contrast, if you like, to the kind of softness of the strata and the kind of creamy oats, if you like. But yeah, it is nicely done in that sense. So yeah, very big, thick, creamy, malty leaning New England IPA for me, and just minimal bitterness, and it's got a lovely kind of soft, creamy type fruitiness to it as well. And it does highlight the kind of strawberry side of things from Strata. And there's not too many hops on the market these days that have that red fruity component. The only other one I can think of would be Enigma, actually. So yeah, that's an interesting point about this hop as well. But it really highlights the kind of the tropical fruity side of things and the strawberry component from Strata very, very nicely. So thumbs up to Track Brewing. This has been a really interesting beer to review from an educational perspective, and it's also just a very nice beer overall. And with the amount of hazy New England IPAs on the market these days, you can't ask for much more than that. So let's leave it at that for this one then. So once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Track Brewing Company. I wonder if we will see any more collaborations involving indie hops at some stage. Nice to mention them on the channel, of course, and yeah, we'll be keeping an eye out for beers involving these guys in the future. But in the meantime, this one was the Wake Up the Neighbours, an 8% New England double IPA, very oat focused and highlighting the Strata hop from over in Oregon in the States, but a lovely big thick creamy New England double IPA from Track Brewing Company in Piccadilly in Manchester once again. So yeah, let's leave it there. Thanks again for watching my reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Track Brewing Company. I'm sure we'll return to these guys at some point soon, but these guys are a great New England IPA brewery. If you're interested in English beers, this is a good place to start, but I would recommend you try the Sonoma Pale Ale from these guys. That's a beautifully done beer, but if you want something a little bit more oaty and creamy like Treehouse, then I guess this is one that you should hit up. But thanks again for watching. I'll catch you guys in the next review. Slàinte, Skål, cheers, and do make sure you check out Track Brewing Company from Piccadilly in Manchester. Cheers.